This project will make our place clean, our cities clean, our country clean.
This is a project, and we are part of the project, and we are part of the deal.
chokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe nechokwadi pasi pano taiona moto marongera vanoita wepanyika vanoda kudisu vamwe tioneswe moto dai pasina kupindira kwaishe kana dzimba dzedu dzingadai dziri dzavo mawanzira vanoita dzimba dzavo vanoda kudisu vamwe tigare mumiti dzimba gumi pamunhu mumwe chete.
Something is smelling in Harare, and that could be a flawed, an allegedly flawed procurement and tender process that led to what is now the contested Pomona deal. Now, as we hold this show to get into the west of the west at Harare, we are cognizant that Council yesterday had a special meeting to discuss the Pomona deal, to see the way forward. So we are going to be having stakeholders from Harare, the greater Harare city, and our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe, TIZ, who help in looking at issues around corruption, investigating corruption in terms of exposing it, not rather arresting people, but also in terms of setting up issues that will ensure that we curb corruption and we become a corrupt-free society. Now, this is the situation right now. With me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga, as usual, and we are going to be delving into the rubbish at Harare City Council's Pomona deal. Thank you for joining us, and as we come back from this break, welcome back to this, the situation right now. And in studio, I am joined by the mayor of Harare, Harare number 1, Jacob Mafume. I'm also joined by Tracy from Transparency International Zimbabwe. And I have Comrade Hardlife from the residents who are actually looking into this deal and have been doing a lot of work in also exposing this rot at the rotten dumpsite of Harare's Pomona. And I've also from Fees Farai, thank you very much for joining us. Now we're going to be discussing, I just want to invite our partners in this show, the situation right now, Transparency International Zimbabwe, Tracy, to just get us rolling, to look at the issues that have raised the red flags for us as residents, the red flags for us, for Zimbabweans, over this Pomona deal. Tracy?
Thank you very much, Blessed. So I think as TIZ, our main concern on the deal is on the procurement processes and beneficial ownership. I understand there are a number of issues that we'll discuss, issues to do with the environment, issues to do with the cost to the residents, but the TIZ we want to interrogate to see if due process was followed in the procurement, how Geogenics got the tender, was it legal, was it in terms of section 315 of the Constitution, was it fair, competitive, is it cost effective? I think this is our interest. And also I think as TIZ we've been advocating for e-procurement. I think this is our chance to push forward to say if the process were not followed, maybe it's time that we adopt e-procurement, which reduces human interaction. And also we want to look at beneficial ownership. The new Companies Act mandates companies to publicize the real owners of a company. And I think in this instance, would like to know the real owners or the real beneficiaries from the geogenics, the owners, I think, of the company which got the deal. So I think it is that we are more interested in talking about the processes around the public procurement of the deal, as well as who actually owns the company.
Amazing. Now, these issues are very, very critical in exposing or understanding issues around corruption. Who owns the company? The procurement laws that have been put in Zimbabwe, were they followed? Were they taken into consideration in awarding this deal? Now, basically in Zimbabwe, when you award deals of this nature, you go to tender. Now, I have had Life Mzingwa here from the Water Alliance, Community Water Alliance. He's also a resident of Harare. Now, as a resident, you have had serious interest in the running of Harare City Council. Now, maybe I would start from the point where I ask you, are you aware of us having gone to tender to give this deal?
Thanks very much, Blessed. I think that issue was actually resolved at a full council meeting. I don't think any tender processes were followed in the awarding of this, scandal. I'll call it a scandal, not a deal. And it's very unfortunate because normally what happens is that in awarding tenders, there are limits that the local authority, in terms of the law, they preside over particular tenders. If they exceed that amount, then it falls under PRAS and the government at national level. I think Mayor number 1 will then talk about the legalities around that. But our understanding from the side of residents is that no due processes were followed in terms of awarding of tender for that particular company. And I want to just emphasize that the same company under a different name came to council sometime around 2017-2019. Council did not accept, you see. And they are the same company, though they've changed the name, now calling themselves Gijonex, but they're the same company, and this was actually even echoed in council in terms of just a change of name. So it's just a matter of you, Blessed, coming, wearing red, and then next one, you see that probably you have not been successful. You come probably with a new hairstyle, but with the same mission to get the contract. So that's what I'm saying.
Farai, because the mayor here is the defendant, so I'll come to him last. But Farai, I mean, you're concerned about this deal. What really makes you get concerned about it?
It's a couple of things. The first one is that as a young person, I'm concerned about intergenerational justice in two parts. The first part is that generations after us must not inherit a highly indebted city or country. So this deal makes sure that the child who is born today to be a resident of Harare tomorrow is already indebted, because you are tied to $300 million of a shady arrangement of elites, what people would like to call combrado kind of transactions, ones in which those who are politically connected can manipulate the system to get what they want at the expense of everyone else. Now we have to pay for what some other people are benefiting. So that's my first concern. The second concern is that there was a democratic deficit in respect of the number of councillors that had been recalled by hook or crook during the time in which this scandal was adopted in whatever form, whether a resolution or whatever, it doesn't really matter. It really concerns me that a few individuals taking advantage of a democratic vacuum created by the vacancies that I referred to, decided to go in bed with the devil and then tie the citizens of Harare, the residents of Harare, to a deal that is that smells like that. And then my third concern is the issue of it's on the superstructure of it, the issue of conflation of the state with the interests of capital in our country. So it's something that goes beyond just what happens in Harare. So you find that we don't have genuine business people making money because of our environment. So those who are connected, who pretend to be business people, using their political connections, now come back to us and try to rob us of what belongs to us. So and then comes the substance of the deal itself. The cost of it, it's very expensive. Now we have to pay for dumping rubbish, and we have to pay $40 per ton. And we are told that this deal is supposed to be a waste to energy kind of arrangement, which basically means that the waste is actually a raw material. It's an input into whatever they want to do with the energy production. So it boggles the mind how you then have to pay for bringing raw materials to a particular space. Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? You are paid for what you bring because you are bringing recyclable stuff that they want to use in order to produce energy. So in short, those are my concerns as a citizen.
Beautiful. Now I come to the accused. Now there are issues that Tracy raised as we started the program, and these issues I hope you would address them. The issue of due process. Did you or did you not, as a local authority, follow due process? And do you or do you not know the owners of Geogenics? And if you do, please share with us.
Well, look, we have a challenge in the sense that when this deal was done, I was on many suspensions or persecutions. What Farai tried to call it nicely, a democratic vacuum. I was the vacuum. I was not there. But I have and will speak for council, nonetheless, because you don't need to be there to speak for council. What would transpire today? Yesterday we held a special council meeting, and in that special council meeting, what came out is that due process was not followed. That was admitted by the officials. They were called at every turn. They were called by the ministry, called by the president's office, called by other offices that intervened. They attempted to do the processes as they know them, but they were then told that each and every process was not necessary. So one of the alarming things that they revealed today is that there is no bankable feasibility study. In other words, no one knows whether the project is bankable. They were refused to do the feasibility study. Then secondly, they also did not go to tender. At every tender, they were being chaperoned and guided by the Ministry of Local Government, to the extent that this is a contract for council, by council officials. It was being negotiated in the president's office, in the ministry. None of the meetings were held at the place where the contract and the signatures and the assets belong. That is peculiar. How do you remove people from their own environment and foist a contract upon them? So there was no procedure. The only procedure that was followed was that someone bought a ballpoint pen, some bond paper, and ink, sat in a room, signed, and suddenly there was the owner of 200 hectares, and you're supposed to be paid 22,000 US dollars per. In the history of bond paper and pens, no one has ever made such profit since colonial times. The last time those things happened was during Rhodes' time, and colonials who would move around with feathered fountain pens and make some chief sign. and suddenly the chief is told, no, because you put some sign on a piece of paper, the land is no longer yours. So that's what they are doing. So these people are moving with bond paper and pens, call people to a meeting, they leave that meeting rich. No tender, no process, everything, an exemption, nothing. All they say is that you are being called by the minister, you are being called by the president, you are being called by so and so, the Reserve Bank was there, Attorney General was there. So I dare say that, and you then wonder who was taking care of the best interests of the citizens, who was taking care of the best interests of Harare. The officials, to a man, simply said, we were called, we went, we were called, we went, and ultimately we were told to sign, and we signed.
So, Mayor, who is going to benefit from this deal? I mean, because we have seen a lot of hands coming through on this pie. In your understanding, from the basis of protection of the residents and protecting of money that is paid to council from corrupt deals or from corrupt tendencies that you're talking about, who is behind the benefit?
I don't know. There's that company called Geogenics. It's being fronted by Ndelish Nguvawa and some Albanians, I'm told. I asked my council officials about the physical address. They don't know the physical address. The company is said to be coming from Netherlands. It's being fronted by the individuals that are here, that have been coming out on the press. They are the ones that are going to benefit. For the cost of a pen and bond paper, they managed to take land and they managed to get a contract of 22,000 per month, increasing to 40,000 per month, and that money is guaranteed whether we deliver waste or not, to the extent that they've not bothered to put a weighbridge on Pomona because their money is guaranteed. So they don't even need to measure. They are happier if you don't come and deliver anything at Pomona because they are going to get paid. So the residents are not going to get anything, but these individuals have managed to take, let me illustrate. It's like someone coming to your piece of land. You own maybe 2,000 square meters. Then they say, I'm going to take 600 square meters. I'm going to build my house here. But guess what, landlord? You are going to be paying rentals to me so that I build $300. In the fullness time, I also have a swimming pool at the corner. You'll be able to swim in it. So you are going to pay me the rentals because I've thought of the idea of building a cottage on 600 square meters. You were doing nothing with it. You had 2,000 square meters. This corner, you were doing nothing. I've put my house and a little swimming pool. You swim a little here by Lou. Then we are all happy. But before I build, pay me $300 per month on your own property. So, and they put that in the contract. It is the sheer arrogance of it all. The sheer nonchalant, the I don't care attitude is frightening. What can you do to me attitude? We are who we are. We can take what we want. And I said earlier, yes, in the special council meeting, how do you take everything from a council? They took power stations, they took roads, they took SUPCO. Now they have nothing to take. They're now going after our rubbish to make sure that they take everything from the city council, and they are the only ones to benefit. There is nothing, absolutely zero, zilch benefit for the residents. As of today, for 30 days at $550 per month, it's 600,000 a month, US dollars net. With the way the rates are flying, it's between 200 million to 300 RTGS per month that the city council has to fork, simply because somebody signed a paper somewhere.
Tracy, we have procurement laws for a reason. And from what the mayor is saying, none of these procurement laws appear to have been followed from what we have. Now, as a corruption watchdog, what are the things that come to mind when you hear this?
I think these were exactly our fears, that no tender processes were followed, because the reason why we have the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act is because we want to safeguard our assets. We want to safeguard the process at which we get our goods and services, and this is why we have the Constitution, which provides for a fairness, cost-effective and competitive procurement, is because we want to safeguard corruption. So what comes to mind after hearing this is that obviously it's clear corruption. Someone is benefiting, and from what the mayor said, I think from my earlier contribution, that we were also concerned about the real owners of the geogenics, and I think it's all coming out now. That there's actually serious corruption that is happening. A few individuals are benefiting at the expense of taxpayers. I think what would recommend would just to unleash Zach on them if it's possible, and we'll continue to expose what's happening, because I think people are not interested in at first. When I think they talk about the Pomona started in February, but we're not interested because we didn't know the cost implications that it has on residents. So it's only now that we heard that you're now supposed to pay to dump your rubbish that you're now interested. So I think if we continue with the discourse and people are interested, I'm hoping we're able to cancel the deal.
Tracy talks about unleashing Zach, but I was at the dump site, and the Minister of Information, Monica Mutsvangwa, was there, and she said those who are against the deal are detractors, because this is a good deal for Zimbabwe, for Harare, and this deal has actually been awarded national asset status by government through a resolution of cabinet, and as the mayor says, the president's office is involved. Now, is it even possible to begin to talk about corruption or setting out Zach to a deal that has been approved by cabinet, that has been, that is being touted as one of the best deals that we have ever had to keep Harare clean?
Thanks very much, Blessed. I think the first point that I want to respond to the minister, she was guided by just a philosophy that you need to turn waste into energy without necessarily getting into the details of the deal. You see, if you go into the details of the deal, there's nothing to smile about. Firstly, I want to just point three things. First, in the agreement, the concession agreement, it is actually stated that the city is supposed to have an agreement with the Gijonex first. Then over time, a project company, not Gijonex, will be created that will then assume the rights and obligations that are contained in the deal, and will be the one that will be responsible for execution. So you talk of issues around, background checks on tenders, and it falls away. No one knows whether the company is existing as we are seated here, the project, so-called project company, or it will exist or it will be created after. So that's the first point. So I don't think minister can say such a deal makes sense. Then the second issue that I want to also highlight, which the mayor is highlighting, they are obliged as a local authority to provide in 2022 550 tons of waste per day, and the cost is $40. So if you multiply, they will get 22,000 on a daily basis from waste only.
That is waste coming from city of Harare, but also there's waste coming from private players, is it not? So this is more than 22,000 they'll get per day.
Yes, the deal is so specific that every player, whether it's an independent player, whether it's council, if they approach a Pomona, they will pay. And that is the reason why, as has been alluded to by Mayor, they are not concerned about a way bridge. Because on a daily basis, our own assessment, the local authority, when it dumps too much waste at Pomona, they bring around 200 to 250 tons. Deliberately, they moved to 550. So they will be paid for what they have not delivered. All right? That is in 2022. In 2023, the quantity is increased from 550 to 650. You multiply by 40, you will see the. In 2024, it's increased to 750. In 2025, it is increased to 850. In 2026, it is increased to 1,000. which would then translate to 40,000 US per day in terms of payment. And they've got a particular clause which prohibit, it actually, verbatim, I want to state it verbatim, it prohibits the local authority from discussing or contesting, you see, the amount based on the minimum quantities of waste. This is what is contained in the deal. And beyond that, we have got actually 11 issues that we raised. They have also said they will set what they call a liaison committee, and there will be also experts. The local authority is supposed to pay 50% of the cost in terms of paying experts. And then GGNX will pay 50%, you see. So for the minister to then state that this is the best, it's an indication that she has not read the deal. That's a guarantee that she has not read the contents, because the devil is in the detail. She has not read the contents.
She sits in cabinet past it.
Yes, even for cabinet. I think the other issue would be around vested interest in terms of the people that are agreed. I think Mayor mentioned one of the person we have known in the past. This is not the first time that this guy is mentioned on rotten deals. We've had the issue around which Wopo Shimono raised around COVID funds, right? We know when this person is mentioned, who is behind the person. So the nation should not appear like we don't know who is involved. If you see this guy mentioned, it is public knowledge that there is a person that everyone knows fronts this person. So that's why you see these deals are passed in parliament, in cabinet. Now I come to the issue that you are alluding to when you said, is ZAC going to be effective now that it involves big guys? These are key questions that we always have been raising. Whether ZAC can produce anything of substance when it comes to prevention of corruption in this nation. And this is a litmus test. Let's see if they can do anything before we make allegations so that it becomes facts. If we then move around and say these people cannot act in any way. So, and I don't expect that only ZAC should be involved. We have other independent institutions. We have the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. We're supposed to, because we are looking at Section 73, where we are looking at environmental rights. Issues of waste relate to environmental rights. We expect them to act. Parliament, in terms of playing an oversight role over the executive arm of the state, which includes, the cabinet that we are referencing. We want to see whether Parliament is there to play their role, or we still have these challenges around, whipping system in Parliament, where they take particular position because of the people that are involved. So we wait to see this. We have presented a petition to Parliament, and the courts, the issue is also before the courts through other interventions, and they will be also engaging ZAC. Let's see whether the rhetoric around the fight for corruption is a real issue, or those are just putting lipstick on the mouth of God.
A blessed spirit. I just want to for us to talk a bit about what you said about what the minister said. I think the council, maybe the mayor can confirm, they have been pushing this smart city concept, where we're going to use technology, clean energy, everything, which I think is a very good idea. I think maybe from the minister's point of view, it's actually a good idea. But FES has also been advocating for what they call just cities, where you don't just look at what's clean, what's smart, like the Pomona waste. I think on the face of it, if we remove the procurement processes and the amounts, it's a good deal that you are turning waste into energy. It's a smart city concept, but we need to look at what we call just cities, where we are now looking at what are the cost implications of a smart city. What are the residents feeling about it? Were they consulted? Is their participation on what how can they contribute to that? So I think, not to say the smart city is bad, but I think we need to look beyond clean sources of energy and smart things, and look at the human faces of these deals and some of the concepts that we are pushing forward.
I want to come to you, Farai, in also looking at what Tracy is saying. Would you say that this deal that you have called a scandal is putting a good ambassador role for a smart city?
No, it's not, because as Hard Life has said in his opening statement, he said there is no feasibility study that was put together, and then people then concluded that these are going to be the outputs. So with no feasibility study, we can't even state for sure that we are pursuing the concept of a circular economy, trying to recycle stuff and get some other products that can help us develop further. So that argument falls away because there's no feasibility study. In fact, I had a small conversation with Hard Life before we started. He was actually telling me that there are very few success stories of waste to energy processes that have happened across the continent. So what it basically means is that you need to have the precision of a butcher's cleave to be able to come out with clear outputs that are value for money. So when you miss it at the start, you don't even have a feasibility study. We can't then trust you to then say, okay, these people are going to give us, say, even 20 kilowatts of that cannot even power this whole complex. So the smart city concept falls away. But tied to that, if you go to court any day, you spend the whole day in court, you will hear a lawyer saying section so and so is read with section so and so. The reason why lawyers say section so and so is read with section so and so, it means you can't build silos when you are putting together a development plan. So you have to consider everything, which is why you realize that South Africans at some point were giving credit to former Finance Minister Hlahla Nene for blocking the nuclear deal, despite the fact that there were electricity blackouts all the time. So you can't then say because the nuclear deal is going to produce this amount of energy, we are in blackouts, let's just support the deal, when the deal is going to collapse the entire economy. So when you then argue that this is a smart city concept, you have to look into other issues. So she says the just cities concept. You have to look at the policies that you are adopting. Are they going to deliver equitable services to various kinds of interest group in your particular city? So if you take 300 million US dollars of one city and tie it to just one deal, where are you going to get money to ensure that you have got elevators that are sensitive to people who are visually impaired? You walk around the city if you want, including on council buildings. You will find very few buildings that are sensitive to what I've just said. Where are you going to get money to ensure that your most vulnerable groups of people are able to live self-determined lives at some point, benefiting from the services that because if someone is poor and unemployed, and then they now have so much rates to pay to the $300 million deal, they have no capacity to then put money aside to start a small business to live a self-determined life at some point. So your city is insensitive to that particular person's needs. So where are you going to get money to ensure that your transport system is sensitive to the women who use that transport system on a day-to-day basis? If you go to Moshika, those things, you will hear that.
But Farai, I wanted to, there's certain questions that I put together and, to ask, but the turn of the discussion. But Farai, you are now comparing a just city and a smart city, and your argument is being controlled by a deal that you believe is unjust and corrupt, right? So how do you get to that conclusion? Because if we were discussing about a just deal, we could have come to those to say this is too expensive, it's just, it's not corrupt, it's too expensive, it negates the needs of others.
In a very few words is that the smart city concept, as much as it is attractive, it must be holistic and look into issues of the greater interests of the residents of Harare, including the most vulnerable of our. It's not mutually destructive. It does not necessarily mean that if you are going to pursue a just city concept, then you can't have a smart city. You can have a smart city which is just in its construction, in its substance, and in the benefits that it gives to the residents.
Mayor, your people are speaking, and I assume you are hearing them. But do you feel powerless? Because as you spoke, you said everything was taken away from you. The right to have that discussion, to have that debate around how to structure a deal of that nature was taken away from you. Transport. Recently, we saw Zupco monopoly in cities being controlled by central government. Do you feel powerless?
Well, I feel that the citizens are disempowered. We as elected residents or elected officials are the embodiment of the power of the citizens. And once their vote is given and they get someone elected, and that person gets elected into a shell of an office, the one who has been disempowered is more the resident who wants to have their voice heard. So my frustration is that the residents want things to work and they are making us get elected. And we've created a structure which seems to show that there's devolution, that there are various centers of activity or power, as it were. But Nicodemously, the government has gone behind it to strip. If it does not strip you of the powers, it strips you of the assets.
But this government that you're talking about, Mayor, the executive that you're talking about was elected into office and also represents the interest of the people. And in this project, in their view or in their actions, they have said that they are representing the interest of the people. Why are you not supporting the interest of the people?
Well, if the people determine, if the people say paying $40,000 to Geogenics is in their interests, well, so be it. Giving someone a lease over your own property and you pay, not knowing what you are going to get out of it, not knowing whether you deliver or you don't deliver is in the best interest of the citizens, then let's ask them. Why didn't they ask the citizens? Would the citizens have not agreed to such beauty? I mean, which citizen can refuse to give, blessed $40,000 per day for nothing? So if that is the concept of citizenry, then they should have consulted, so that at least people know that we are paying these people this much money because we love them and it is in the best interest. Now, because the citizens were not consulted, they are writing petitions as residents, they are complaining to me, my councillors, everywhere, my feed, my everywhere I do consultation, people are saying the deal must be cancelled. And that is what I'm echoing. It is not for me. It is not. It's not a crusade, really. It's what the best interests of the residents of Harare. They are saying, no, man, we don't need to pay you so that you pay you take our property or you bring some phantom electricity and let it's like the argument we used to talk about when we were young is that if I pick $1 and we buy a half bread, who will eat the crust? And then you start arguing about eating the crust, and then someone says, no, for you to eat everything, give me $2. And then you buy a phantom promise. It does not make sense. It's just, in the first place, it's pitiful that our institutions have been reduced to that level. If you hear the offices who were discussing this deal, it's the creme de la creme of Zimbabwe civil service. It's supposed to be the experts. I mean, if you are sitting in the president's office, you've got people from the Reserve Bank, you've got the Attorney General, the Minister of Finance, Ministry of Local Government. You think these are the grundigis of wisdom, the perfecters of art. You know, you'd think that anything that comes out from a meeting and a grouping of such people will leave you mouth open with admiration and love. But this is mouth, we have to shut our noses. You have to pinch your nose not to smell what these offices have brought out. How do they do that? How do people even begin to sit and foist such drivel, such nonsense on the citizens? I've run out of superlatives to describe this devilish deal, deal made from hell, Satan's buffet, and so forth. These are problematic things. They cannot be good.
So Blessed, I just want to understand from the mayor. I think we can say the citizens were consulted because maybe the councillors were consulted because we voted for them to represent our interests. I just want to understand why they stemmed the deal. Was it because of the pressure from executive, or it's because they thought it's a good deal?
Well, what happened with the remaining councillors? Remember the vacuum you was talking about. 24 councillors had been fired by ZANU-PF. Those are the Triple C councillors where I belong, led by President Advocate Nelson Chamisa. They were fired, and I am tormented. I mean, my troubles drive the newspaper sales in the country. So tormenting me has become a spectator sport. To remove me from office, put me back like a yo-yo. So we were not there to defend the interests. There was ZANU-Lite, fronted by Monzora, and ZANU itself, fronted by the ministry and the various other offices. So they decided to just take, and they did it just before we came in. It was their last meeting. Before we came in, the biggest thing they decided was to grab a bit of property for themselves, so that when we are democratically bought back, we will be given what at law we call a fait accompli. You know, when you want to marry someone and you are busy gathering robola and so forth, and they give you a date which is 3 months away, then you arrive there, and then the person you were supposed to marry, you find is already pregnant. You know, it is what we call a fait accompli. You then ask your elders, comrades, should we continue paying? Is it mine? Whose is it? It becomes the situation of great contemplation and indecision, and you've told everyone there's a party gathered here, so it's a fait accompli. You might end up they thought we'll just accept the pregnancy and say, as it was written in the Bible, one fellow called Joseph celebrated and the world was saved. So you never know what might be captured in your bride. But I don't think some of us are in the mood to accept such fait accomplis. So we reject, and in the meeting that we have held, we have suspended the operation of that deal. People must go in at will. We have set up an investigation committee which will look into this matter within the 14 days. And we have restored the status quo ante, and we agree with the residents who have brought the court action, and we will, there's a resolution that we withdraw our opposition to the residents' court applications. And that any decision on this matter, it is no longer done by the officials, it will be done by council. The officials have shown a great dereliction of duty. They are simply being told what to do, and they do. They have no record of having opposing. All they do is shuttle from one office to another, being told what to do. They engage in Manchurian whispers, phantom raising, frightening each other as to Armageddon will happen to them if they do not obey a certain...
But Armageddon has happened to you, Mayor, because you have not obeyed certain people. So aren't they right by protecting their interest?
Well, look, when you choose, when we used to say when we were young, that he who sets a trap in a place which has been burned by a veiled fire must not be afraid to get their buttocks dirty. So if you are in the middle of trying to catch rats in a veiled fire region, you must have your buttocks dirty. And we are very clear that if it means I have to be suspended and all things need to be done, I have chosen to be my party's representative, Triple C, in the council and as mayor. And to that end, I will act in the best interests of the citizens. And he who works for council must understand where his bread is buttered. You work in the best interests of council at all times. That is what the employment contract says. If you want to work in the president's office, if you want to work in the Ministry of Local Government, by all means go there and work there. But for as long as your contract is being paid by the residents and you are working on the residents' dime, then you sing or dance to the tune of the residents. You don't say your employer who is struggling to pay you, you ask them to pay some other chaps coming from God knows where, $40,000 per day, US net. I mean, what kind of parasitic behavior is that, to behave like these viruses that kill the human being very fast when it is their area where they thrive the most? No, they grow very well in a human being. But what do? They kill that human being very fast, and both of them, the virus and the human being, are buried in the sand. That's destructive, parasitic behavior.
Hard life. Council has made these resolutions. But my question to you, Hard Life, is that if these things had been done in line with the procedures, in line with the laws of this country, would you have been happier to support a deal like this?
I think there are two issues, process issues, which we are talking about in terms of procurement, and then content issues. So we have procedural issues and substantive issues. So we look at both the process and the contents of the deal. Because at the end of the day, like I've said, all these, if they are done in a good manner, they improve service delivery in terms of refuse collection. So to answer your question, if the right procedures were followed, that was one part. The next issue that we're going to do is to look at the contents of the agreement, whether it will then advance issues of justice that Farai spoke around, whether it is...
Obviously, if process would have been followed, the content would have been better. What would it be?
So normally where processes and procedures are followed, you will find a good document at the end. So if they had followed all the processes, and with also people who are ethical, it's not only about processes, because you can have good processes with people who are not ethical, who represent themselves, not residents. You still face the same problems. Because we have had also some deals that followed due processes, but the content is rotten. So from our side, we look at the process and the product.
Now, I want to come to you, Tracy, on the issue that he raises. The process has been followed, but are the people ethical? Yeah. And we're talking about trying to remove the human aspect in awarding of tenders. Let's just have a talk on that.
Okay, so I think it's not enough to follow the processes. I think as Mr. Hard Life has said, sorry, because we have issues, we have cases where...
It's okay, he now has the good life.
As Mr. Good Life has said.
I prefer to call Good Life. It's Hard Life name for my parents.
Okay, so yeah, so I think it's not enough to have the process followed, because I think basically basic procurement processes are that you publish a tender, people send in their bids, etc., and you compare. But if you have people who are supposed to be evaluating the bids, if they have interests, obviously they're going to find technical problems with the other bids, and they'll still pick their preferred bid. So I think it's not enough to follow the processes. The first, the second is on what we're advocating for, the e-procurement. We must have a system where the bids are sent to the system, and the system selects who gets awarded the tender. I think that's better, because the system would know who are the actual owners of the company. I was saying about beneficial ownership, who are the actual company, who are the actual owners, the prices, the feasibility, the competitiveness, everything. We'll look at that. So I think it's better to have an e-procurement system, because the current procurement process are not working. I think, as I mentioned before, it is not good enough to follow the processes. We have lots of tenders which due process was followed, but still ended up in unscrupulous hands, something like that. We have issues. We have cases where we have got. Usually, if a tender is well written, is well presented, it's usually not a good tender, usually, because also of the shell companies and also lack of beneficial ownership. You have one company sending 6 tenders purporting to be different companies, and if we don't know the information behind who the owner of the company is, I think there are lots of cases at Parenya where it was discovered that the person who was doing the screening of the tenders was actually an owner of one of the companies. So we need to have a system that is able to dig deep to see who are the real beneficiaries of the bid, of the tender.
Yes, Farai, I want to put you on the spot a bit, but this project has been awarded national project status, and do you think that it is possible for a local authority, with no executive power, to undo a national project status project approved by the whole cabinet? And in answering that, do you think council does have any power, real power, to run cities in this country with the way the law stands?
Well, I think I'll answer the last one first. The council should have the power to really, considering the laws that are there, our constitution now advocates for devolution and stuff. And we know who is opposed to devolution. And then in terms of some people just waking up and declaring something a national asset for reasons of personal gain, and then think that because they've declared something a national asset, then there is some kind of invincibility. It can't be reversed. That's not true, because the key issue here is what Tracy was talking about. The Zimbabweans were not really interested in this deal until they started to hear about the cost. So if each and every one of us who is a ratepayer here in the city of Harare is opposed to this deal, it won't see the light of the day. But if it's 6 people, it's very easy to isolate Mutsvangwa, Mafume, Tracy, and say, it's just these 3. Let's deal with them. But if it's all of us, of course we have got the power to reverse it. And once we, the residents, have got the tenacity to actually face the beast head on, it basically empowers the council itself to make the reversal possible. But I also want to highlight a cultural issue here. She was talking about the system. It's this deal is so much similar to the cold storage deal. So it's a culture issue. If you go to the cold storage deal, you realize that people signed off assets belonging to the Cold Storage Commission to a company which has got assets that in total are worth £1. £1 in the UK, and then what then happens is that that particular company, or the beneficiaries or the owners of this company, are now collecting rentals from properties belonging to the Cold Storage Commission before they invest the 150 million that they were saying they are going to invest. It's the same tactic. So when Minister Monica Mutsvangwa says it's the best deal, I'm not going to trust her to say this is the best deal and then agree that she actually means that it's the best deal, when I know that the same people negotiated the Cold Storage Commission takeover to individuals who are now benefiting from the cows, the farms, the buildings, and then promising us a phantom that they are going to invest 150 million. They've not done so. They won't do it again in this deal.
Sorry, Blessed. Just add to what he's saying. I think it's actually very easy to reverse this deal because, as the mayor said, process was not followed. So on that basis, it's actually legal to cancel the deal because of the process. The procurement process is not being followed.
You want to tell us that you want to cancel a cabinet deal?
Following the law.
The signatures on the deal, there's no one in cabinet whose name appears on the deal. The signatures are all council people and the company. I am surprised that they were negotiating at cabinet or cabinet office or whatever office they were negotiating at. This thing should have been negotiated at council. We should have gone to seek approval of a negotiated deal, not to go there to be told, no, before you sought approval, we were thinking of approving for you. Then you try to say, no, we want a bankability, feasibility study. No. Actually, we don't worry yourself. Why do you need a bankability, feasibility study? We've already approved that you don't need it. I'm the Ministry of Local Government. You rush to there and say, no, my friends, why are you worried? We are the Reserve Bank. We are happy. You go to the Attorney General, I'm the biggest lawyer in the country. And before you even thought of the legality, I have approved any and every clause in your contract. Before you write it, it's approved. Don't worry. I mean, what country operates in such a kangaroo fashion? You can't have pre-approvals of your thinking. Before you even think about it, you are told, you raise your arm and say, what if we, why are we paying? No, don't worry, we've already thought of that. Oh, okay, what about a feasibility study? Yeah, we've already thought of that. No, you are taking too much time, sign. So, I mean, if we are going to run this country like that, then we are doomed. We are doomed. These old people are going to live nothing. They are 70 years old. Maybe they are living 1 month at a time. We have got 40 years. We are going to be alive for a long time, and it is our decision to allow octogenarians and people who should be in old people's home to decide the pace at which we are moving.
We have actually run out of time, but Tracy, before we go, what is the message from TIZ as we continue to talk around corruption, following the laws and processes in procurement, and as Zimbabwe continues to sit on that level where we are looked at as really one of the most corrupt countries in the world?
Yeah, I think these are one of the things that make us rank low on the corruption perception index. And it's sad to note that the Pomona deal is just an example of the kind of deals that the government is or the council or the government is engaging
the government.
in.
We are opposed.
The government is engaging. I think it's now interesting to us because we are the direct payers and we know it is a direct bearing on our pockets. But one of the deals that does not have a direct bearing on our pockets. So I think as citizens, as CSOs and other associations, we should be on alert. We should be interested to know every other deal, even if it does not have a bearing on our pockets. We need to know what's going on, the process being followed, and make noise about it. I think it's very good that CSOs and other organizations are making noise about this deal. I think we need to keep on making noise, making sure, being holding our elected leaders to account, because we elect them to be to practice oversight roles in the government department. So I think we need to continue pestering our elected leaders.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Now, that was the word from our partners, Transparency International Zimbabwe. But, Mayor, I will just give you the last opportunity to just look at the people of Zimbabwe and, address them because, council has been this center of rubbish for a very long time in terms of corruption, As you were speaking, as I was going through some of the minutes, especially the minutes of the day when this deal was approved, nearly all your officials are in an acting capacity. Most of them were sacked because of corruption. You are the hellhole of corruption as Harare City Council. Now, can you address us on that aspect, what you're going to do, what is happening to deal with this so that citizens can begin to have trust with Harare City Council and they can continue to bank their rates with you?
Well, most of the officials were suspended on cases that have not been proved. And the reason why they are being kept out is for these junior officials who are in acting capacity to be tossed around. I'm sure that if we had substantive heads of departments and they were still there, if the proper substantive town clerk was there, the proper substantive chamber secretary was there, they would not have agreed to this. You've got junior officials that we have elevated from grade 6 right to do functions of grade 1s or grade 2s. They don't have the stamina. If they are called to a cabinet office, they quiver and shiver. They have not been used to interact with these people at that level. So there's a method in the suspension. The method in the suspension is to remove senior leadership at the councils. Leave acting juniors who hope one day or probably somebody who had never dreamed of going to a minister's or president's office was busy doing their low grade work and playing in town. Suddenly he's sitting with the Reserve Bank, he's suddenly sitting with the minister, he's suddenly sitting with the president's office, he's suddenly receiving calls from very powerful individuals. His grade had never trained him to be in a position where he can say, hang on, Mr. Reserve Bank, you know that's not possible. You know that's not possible. They are busy quivering and shivering because they are junior staff we have elevated. They are not approving our staff. Most of them, if you look at the cases that they just find one little case, one little procedure which was not followed on one innocuous activity, and they make it criminal abuse of office. And once that is done, they then say, don't come to work. They clear the ground of people. And then they tell you, look what happened to your boss. It is because he refused with his signature. If you refuse to sign, you are going. So we should look at some of these things with a deeper eye, with a more discerning eye. And then we see there's a method in the what has been happening in councils, and there's also a method why they don't want to approve substantive directors for council. So the Pomona deal has illustrated why we are under attack as local authorities. The Pomona deal has illustrated where the source of corruption is coming from. If you listened to what my officials were saying, they were saying we were called by this ministry, we were called by this office, we were told to forget about this process, forget about that process, we were told this process was not important, and it is not them. They are simply being told what to do because a leadership vacuum at both the political and the technical level has been created at city councils with spurious charges being leveled against other councillors. So we are having, as Edison Zobo used to say, a country can be where bigger fish concentrate in confining the smaller fish. That is what is happening.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you very much, viewers, for joining us on the situation right now where we were discussing the smelly Pomona Dumpsite deal. And here in studio, in proud partnership with Transparency International Zimbabwe, we had the mayor, we had members of civil society, and we were discussing the issues that matter most for you. Is the deal for you or against you? Is the deal going to make Harare a better place or a worst place? This is situation right now with me, your host, Dara Blessed Mhlanga. We bring you critical discussions. We bring you debate that matters. We allow your voices to be heard. This is the alternative platform. This is HSTV. Thank you very much.
Mabasa mashanu pamunhu mwechete wanoda kuti suhamwe tifetiri marova dai pasina kupindira kwaishe nechokwadi pasi pano taiona